All right. All right, we are back in the building, guys. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us. Another episode of the Sedell special guest, Nicola Aziz. We're going to bring him back in right away. Welcome back, Nick.
Hey.
Amazing. All right, great. So as we were saying, I want to talk a little bit about your most recent work. You have a video that you have just released that's a part of a series entitled White Barbies. And we're going to watch the video real quick, guys, and then I'd love for you to tell us about the inspiration behind not only the video, but the series and how many pieces are going to be featured in the series total down the line. All right? Let's bring that up right away. I'm really interested in knowing more about how you came up with this title, White Barbies, because I just have all these ideas in my mind. There we go. Are you guys able to hear that okay on your end? Can you hear the sound, Nicholas?
No, I can't hear the sound, no.
You can't hear sound?
I cannot.
Okay, well, the sound is coming out, I believe, don't worry, I believe it is, because when I test it, it is coming out on my end, and it does, when you save the live, it does come out.
Oop.
So we'll just let it play and test it out and see what happens here.
Yeah, maybe it's just not coming on mine.
Sure, yeah, we'll see. I know there was a little bit of difficulties when I tested, but I know that it does, when you do save the live, it does, the sound does come out.
Cool.
And our viewers can also hear the sound. I believe it's the person who you're doing the live with. Get it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is amazing that you can show it like this. This is
Loving that music, though.
Yeah.
Sorry you can't share it. I hear it.
I mean, it's ingrained in my head very well. So,
I love this part.
Nice.
Incredible.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
wow. I'm incredibly curious about the process of or the inspiration rather. Let's start there rather behind this piece. I really particularly enjoyed these the sound bits that you chose, and the music that you chose. Not only get a little rhythm, to it, but obviously because people, they do want a little bit of entertainment, so we enjoyed that. But the deeper message, again, I think after this, all that was resonating is give me the loot, and that was what was resonating and powerful. So go ahead and tell us, Nick, about the inspiration.
Yeah. I mean, the inspiration really comes from museums. One, working as a curator in a museum currently, but also looking at just the history of museums. These are institutions that are literally rooted in racism and imperialism. Some of the first museums were founded to house looted African objects. So I think, a lot of my work currently within the museum is, I literally was hired to change the way that particularly people like me can experience and engage with museums. And I think part of the issue previously is that we're not acknowledging the truth of of what these institutions were and how they continue to perpetuate imperialism, racism, and white barbarism. And so this piece is really inspired by the idea of just pulling together all these different you know uh, indications or examples of this history, and but also showing how even that history is disputed. I start off the video with this art historian, who's saying it wasn't looting, and then you have all these different clips of white men saying oh, it wasn't art, what we if we didn't steal loot
Then
it,
they wouldn't have appreciated it. Yeah,
and that's the audacity of a statement
right. It was meant
it's,
to record history, right? Don't tell me what its value is.
yeah. So I mean, it goes back to the idea. I mean, just the ego, the audacity of particularly these individuals to say what's history or what's value, say what's property, which they did, and so which they continue to do in so many cases. And so that's the inspiration, and also too, I'm really just interested in how all of that plays into the current context of the art industry, particularly as a Black artist. That's why I kind of ended it with that footage of the auctions. It's Kerry James Marshall is an artist who is still living, and sold this piece, or one of his pieces sold at an auction for $21 million. Kerry James Marshall gets none of that money, and then leading into the example of Basquiat, Basquiat, his piece, he's now, deceased obviously, but one of his pieces sold for, I think, $150 million at auction, and what percentage of that goes to his family or his foundation, so just kind of, and that's why the piece is called Pimping Ain't Easy, because it's You know, you start off by looting African objects. You start off by creating institutions to house those looted African objects, and now you continue in an art world in which the Black artist is in a lot of ways fetishized and pimped. You know, for their culture, for their thoughts, for their words, and then a lot of times aren't getting that money back anyway. But then, you know, like these white collectors are then collecting all this Black art, because Black art's the hot shit right now. But you know,
and then passing it down through generation, creating again this generational wealth.
Exactly. So I think you know, it really hit for me, like a lot of it too hit when I realized you know, I work, like I said, at NOMA. You know, it's the oldest museum in the city. It's the largest museum in the city. We have 12-acre sculpture garden, and in that sculpture garden exists literally world-class contemporary art sculptures, a lot of which are by Black artists. That sculpture garden is named after two white people, an extremely wealthy family, who is now, you know, buying Black art, you know, in mass and putting it, you know, sometimes in the sculpture garden, but sometimes not. And I just think there's like so much irony in the fact that a now white family, a rich white family who generationally wealthy, is now consuming Black art in mass and putting it in a sculpture garden on a former plantation. You know, like that's just like, that's crazy. You know, that's crazy irony. Like, it's like, you know, art, contemporary art, Black art is you know, it's in a very, you know, yeah, I just think it's I want the piece to kind of just shed light on all that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is again just one piece in a series, in a collection of pieces. So what is tell us white Barbies? I'm like, what? I'm assuming that again is white barbarism. You're shortening it.
Yeah.
But tell us a bit more about this series. How many pieces are going to be featured in the series? And tell us a little bit about the pieces that have already been featured.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say another number of pieces. I think I'm gonna just keep. I in some ways think this series might go as long as I'm making art, because unfortunately, like there's so much content to pull from. There's so many examples of white barbarism, and so I think it's just for me, like, you know, condensing it or putting in this idea of a series is just to kind of keep it you know, somewhat aligned and somewhat focused. So I'm not sure how many. I think it's going to be a nice number, though. I'm constantly, you know, coming up with ideas and talking with my friends about this, and they have ideas. And like, I think, you know, my you know, hope is too that they will then, you know, also like work and contribute to the series. I mean, I think, you know, luckily I have a great group of friends who have amazing ideas, you know, so
absolutely.
Yeah. But the real just kind of root of it is, I'm really fascinated with this idea of the term white supremacy. And, you know, it's a term that we all obviously have continued to hear so much. And I think it really in some ways is just like thrown around at this point. You know, it's used a lot of times. I actually see it more now used by, you know, what we would call now white liberals, that they use that term a lot. And, you know, obviously also like, you know, writers like Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think he's one of the, you know, bigger people who have popularized the term. But, you know, looking at the term itself, you know, supremacy, supreme, it comes from the Latin word supremus. And, you know, looking at, like, I look at a prime example being the police officer who held his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That wasn't white supremacy. That was white barbarism. You know, slavery wasn't white supremacy, it was white barbarism. You know, Jim Crow wasn't, you know, white supremacy. It was like nothing about that is supreme. You know, it's barbaric.
Very barbaric, you know,
yeah. Killing Black people, you know, lynching is not white supremacy, that's white barbarism. You know,
right.
So
there's nothing supreme about being barbaric.
Yeah. So I just think you know, reframing how we use that, and even it really just starts from like a personal level of like me not saying white supremacy, like me using what it is, like calling it what it is. So like I think the series is really just artworks that you know, shed light on these examples of white barbarism. So you know, one example on the screen is this is an actual book that was circulated in the 1860s by this guy named Dr. J.H. Van Every. He's considered to be the quote unquote first professional racist. And so, he used to literally, write books and get endorsements from then presidents of our nation around this idea that slavery was the natural condition for Black people, and white people were supreme, and that Black people's brains were smaller, and all these different things that we've heard. He was essentially like the first person to kind of promote these theories, and so he had this book, and I just, this is to me like this was the title page for his book, and now I feel like I've recontextualized it to the title page of my series, and it's like I'm scratching out the term supremacy and putting what it really is, which is barbarism. And so just using that as an inspiration for more works, and that video that we just saw, Pimping Ain't Easy, that is another example to me of white barbarism, the idea of going to a continent, just literally taking all their beauty and resources and culture, and then going back to your place and creating entire institutions dedicated to just housing it, and now saying, wait, y'all want that back? No, we can't give it to you because it's ours, or we didn't right. It wasn't looting, or y'all don't have institutions that can hold these things.
That was the original looting.
Yeah, it's like and I think it just there's so many other layers to it now, just like how we see looting,
sure,
and right now in this moment, so it's like yeah, and that's why I started off too, with Kanye West in saying his statement, at the beginning of the piece.
Yeah, I really love that. So relevant. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
true.
Yeah,
that rings true. And again, you did mention that you're currently working at the NOMA, guys, the New Orleans Museum of Art. But given the role that you have there, what is the importance of transparency and promoting truth when you're dealing with the topic of racial injustice, Nick? And how have you worked alongside institutions like NOMA, not only to facilitate the education of racial injustice, but ensure that they're responding appropriately and that we're breaking this cycle, right?
Yeah, it is definitely not been easy. I'm still, literally in the middle of it. I mean, I think, going back to just you asking how I was doing, I'm recognizing this moment, literally, the energy it takes to have these conversations on the daily. And this is the first time I think in my life that I have felt that, because it's, I think we can have these conversations amongst friends and family, but it's a whole nother level when you're talking to a room of white people about
Absolutely.
The imperialistic and racist foundations of the institution that they work at. I'm talking to, the head of the museum about, museums are rooted in imperialism. Oh, no, they're not. Yeah, actually, I can see some links.
Right.
So
right.
I think, yeah, but I think in this moment, luckily, I think it's also profound. It's 2020. The world is being yo, you want to see clear? We have to acknowledge the truths, of across sectors. Art is one small bit, of the larger issue and larger, all we can see all these issues across, sectors and fields. So I think the importance is acknowledging the foundation. Unfortunately, as Black people, we know the roots of so many. We know that we built this country. We know that we have been lynched. We know that we have been oppressed for centuries in this country. Sadly, and for some reason, white people don't want to admit that because it makes them feel weird in their gut. I don't know. But
yeah, it's embarrassing and shame, all that good stuff. I don't care.
Yeah, they're just having a harder time accepting these truths. We accept our DNA had to accept the truth centuries ago. So we're obviously way past that, and so that is, I think, in this moment is getting these institutions to just accept the truths, and now, okay, what actions are you gonna because one of the issues, or one of the kind of discussions I was having in one meeting. It's like, no, like words aren't enough. Like there have been decades, centuries of words. Like it's like the Constitution said all men were created equal. That was words, but the actions showed difference. Like what actions are we making as an institution to really, change all this? So yeah, that's the fight I'm in the middle of right now. But yeah, it's going.
Hang in there. You're doing the work, and I think it's really definitely gonna pass. Someone has to do it, Nick. Someone has to do it.
Yeah, we are, and I think we're all in the places we are, whether it's media, art, medicine, law. Like we're all the people that are in these fights, in these rooms, in these discussions. We've been placed in those rooms and discussions for a reason, and we gotta use the voice to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Well, Nick, on a lighter note, let's talk a little bit about your Andy Warhol Foundation curatorial fellowship. Congratulations, first and foremost.
Yeah.
For this fellowship. Again, guys, it's the Andy Warhol Foundation that has a curatorial fellowship for research and travel. So you had to submit an exhibition proposal to get this fellowship. Tell us about what that proposal was centered around.
Yeah, so it's the project is called Revolutionary Reverberations. So I'm particularly looking at, so like I mentioned earlier, New Orleans is an example of one place that was extremely influenced by Haiti. So 1809, nearly 10,000 Haitians come to New Orleans, double the size of the city. And with that migration brought second lining, shotgun houses, Creole cottages, of course, just spices. So much of, what we celebrate today as New Orleans culture was brought as a result of that. And, despite all of that, there's very little acknowledgement there, and there's no public, like there's no monument, there's no plaque, there's no anything that shows that or illustrates that influence. And so, I think that's an issue. I mean, a lot of my work is, around changing that. And so this project is really looking at New Orleans as a microcosm for really the entire Western Hemisphere. So after the Haitian Revolution, across the Caribbean, across South America, across Central America, freedom movements were inspired by this island. Haiti was France's wealthiest colony. It produced 60% of the world's sugar before the revolution.
Right.
So it was the crown jewel. And after that point, when Haiti got their independence, it obviously just shifted the entire world. It was the first Black republic in the world. It was the first and only successful revolt of enslaved people, in world history. So, it just completely changed everything. And so, what this project is doing is particularly going to these places like Colombia, like Cuba, like Brazil, like Jamaica, like Mexico, like the United States, and looking at how that revolution influenced the cultures and the freedom movements within these locales. And so I'll be working, one, to research more about these connections, but then also to meeting and connecting with artists and culture bearers and other individuals who are making work around these themes, and then curating an exhibition that would be presented here in New Orleans in now early 2023. So.
And to explore these connections, what are some of the countries you've thought about exploring?
Yeah, so Brazil is one one amazing fact that I found, in the research I've done so far is so after the Haitian Revolution in the 1820s in Brazil, there's, like I said, it shifted the world. So like there was fear that was created in the world. All these plantation-based economies were like, oh shit, like I hope these enslaved people here don't revolt like they did in Haiti, Right. And so Brazil, I found through some research that at that period after the revolution in the 1820s, any expression of social revolt, any congregation of enslaved people or free people of color was referred to in letters and newspapers as Haitianismo. And so like just that fact alone was like, whoa, like Haiti, the reverberations of the revolution was like instilling fear in all these plantation-based economies and all these slave owners saying like, we can't have another Haiti. Like another example was in Cuba. There's Afro Cuban leader named Antonio Maceo. It got so deep, like Cuba tried to contest his African heritage, that when after he passed away, they unearthed his body, trying to like show that he wasn't quote unquote black. Like it's a sickness, obviously, but when he was alive, his name was the Bronze, like they referred to him as the Bronze Titan, because he's obviously black based on his complexion.
Right.
At that point, the entire country, they were fearing that he was going to quote unquote create another Haiti. It was like, so just this idea, Vincent Guerrero in Mexico is another example. Simon Bolivar, he led the freedom movements in what is now Colombia and Venezuela. He went to Haiti for 6 months. Haiti supported him with weapons and men, that led to them becoming free. So it's like just all these different examples of how Haiti just really shifted the world, that they're not acknowledged, from a freedom context, but also from just a cultural context. Like compa music in Haiti.
My favorite.
Yeah, it's the same as it's the same as music in Colombia, like Cali, Colombia. It's
absolutely.
It's New Orleans looks very similar to Santiago de Cuba architecturally. Like it's like there's so many of these different influences that we see, and so like part of the project is really just like going to these places and unearthing these connections. And then I think it also too has the potential to really shift how, particularly as African Americans, we view blackness. Like I think like we have somewhat in some ways been conditioned to believe like people in Brazil or people in Colombia or people in Mexico aren't black. Well, no, they are just as black as we are. They have some of the same vibrations, some of the same rhythms, some of the same exact traditions as we do. Vodou is the same as Candomblé and Santeria. Like those are all rooted in African spirituality practices. And
even Portuguese culture that has, like we were speaking about compa, they have a dance that I do called kizomba, which is essentially the same thing.
Exactly. So the project is obviously large, but I'm looking at it from the lens of what Haiti contributed to all these places, and
it was colonialization that made us think that we that was part of the purpose, to make us think that we were different and separated.
Right.
Part of it.
And I think we're getting back to
divide, right? Divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, like we talked about, getting involved in the community is so important. You've also started a youth development program called Right Brained. I love the name, I told you, because you spell it literally right, like to write, WRITE. So I love the play on words. You started this in 2016. Why did you create this program, and who does it target?
Yeah, so I created, just with the thought. I got back to New Orleans. I went to graduate school. After Morehouse, I went to graduate school in the United Kingdom, 2 hours from London and Manchester. And so while I was at Morehouse, and then while I was when I was in the UK, I got to just travel all across the world. And I just really recognized the cognitive effects of traveling and traveling as a Black American and what that really meant.
I know that. Experience over here.
Yeah. So, I came back home, literally, and was like, just such a different person, and recognized how beneficial just these unique cultural experiences were for me. And so, I started this program with the sheer intent of just creating something that could provide similar unique cultural experiences to youth in New Orleans, but also around that idea of writing being that fundamental root of exploring any path you want to of creativity.
Sure.
So
it never goes away. You always have to know how to write. I don't care what your profession is.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the first real mode of expression that we have. And so I started in 2016. I got a grant through an organization here called 4.0 Schools, and I operated until the COVID shutdown at this one high school, Sci High here, and it was just centered around. It was a lot of discussion. It was a lot of you know, exposure to artists, exposure to different creative fields. Like right before, you know, the shutdown, we, you know, I worked with them to curate their own exhibition at a local gallery here. And, you know, the project was centered around, I gave them all disposable cameras. They had like about like maybe 2 weeks to shoot whatever photos they wanted to. And they brought the cameras back. I got the photos developed. I worked with them in the gallery. We walked through like the process of curating. We walked through the process of framing their own photos. And then they put the photos up on the wall, and we had an opening, you know, we had a closing. Several students sold, you know, all the pieces were for sale. So like they got commissions off their work, you know.
Really? And they got the proceeds?
Yeah. So like, yeah, each photo was selling for $150, and they got from that, I think the gallery took 30%, so they got 70% of that, whatever that is. It's like a little under $100. And so, you know,
but even at that young age, just learning this process of business, but also, you know, on top of what you're saying is you're just providing so many different skill sets, right?
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And one like really affirming moment was like at the closing, actually. The CEO, he wasn't the CEO at the time. He was working for the organization 4.0 when I got that grant. He was one of the first. He's another black man. Now he's the CEO of the organization. Unannounced, he kind of just showed up at the closing ceremony, and because he lived close, like down the street.
Right.
And he bought one of the pieces.
Amazing.
And it was just this really affirming moment. It was like, you know, this little seed of an idea I had 4 years ago. And him being really one of the first people who believed in the idea to then come to this gallery 4 years later, literally blocks from his house, buy a piece of artwork from a student that I'm working with, and then that student gets, you know, commission from that piece. It was just like, it really, that moment hit me so hard, because it was just like, oh, like, this is what I was doing. This is what I had. This is the vision I had 4 years ago. You know.
Again, part of your purpose. Isn't it so wonderful once you start to see your purpose manifest, and you're like, all the sacrifice, all the craziness I went through. Yeah, this is it. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. I mean, how old? What is the age range for the students you work with?
So they're all high school students. So it's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior level students.
So that, again, even critical, like, them even knowing, right? Because I think I had mentioned that when we were, you know, our generation, when we were in school, we didn't, even in college, we didn't know that we could like become successful doing art. I didn't know I'd be successful being a talk show host. You didn't know you'd be successful doing, you know, making art and curating. We didn't know that. No. But now the generation after us is like, you know, we're opening up these doors for them and these spaces for them where that is their reality. People are now like, not that that's not amazing too. I want to be a Dr. Laura, but to say I want to be an artist or a curator, that's really incredible.
Yeah. I really feel I feel so much gratitude to be in the position to open that door. Cause like I did, you know, the irony, you know, and the interesting aspect to me is like, you know, despite growing up around so much artwork and even having an uncle who is a world-class artist who I spent so much time with when I was a kid, the idea of being an artist never was in my mind, you know, like, and like that was partly because I think, you know, there's a cultural aspect to that, you know, especially, you know, as a son of a mother who's an immigrant, you know, like there's like this idea of like, oh no, you get law, medicine, or business, you know, like it's like, but you know, it doesn't have to be that, you know. It's like I just think we have.
You know, I never told you, but when I was in college, I thought I wanted to be a clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
Have a whole different path now.
Yeah.
Well, in a sense, I suppose I'm still, you know, getting into the minds of people.
I'm about to say, there's definitely psychology in this. So.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we're gonna wrap things up here very quickly, but I just wanted to say, you know, we really need your help, Nick. You know, when people think about art, one of the first words that comes to mind, I think, is, at least for me, is beauty. Okay. And you had mentioned when we spoke prior to this interview that a lot of us either forget about or don't recognize the beauty in our families and in our history, which I think is so important, especially in these times as Black people. It's so pertinent because we've been conditioned to be ashamed of our history. Yes. The history that is our Blackness. So how can one start the healing process, Nick, that is remembering or recognizing this beauty?
Yeah, no. So I mean, I have this exhibition series here at Preservation Hall called Beauté Oubliée, which is Creole for forgotten beauty. And so I'm looking at it from like an idea of like, you know, Haiti is an example of New Orleans forgetting its beauty. You know, it's forgetting its roots. And so, you know, I think it can be a collective or personal, you know, exercise of just like sitting with yourself and thinking about what's something or someone whose beauty you may have taken for granted. You know, that could be, you know, a relative, that could be a friend. You know, it could be a strawberry. It could be an oyster. Right. You know, it could what's something whose beauty you just, you know, may take for granted. Yeah, sure. Value, and like just sit with that, and then think about why. Like why do you take it for granted? You know, what has prevented you from really, you know, really understanding like the power of that thing or that person. So yeah, I think that's where people can start and make a list. You know, like that's I try to do that. You know, I think that can be a daily exercise, because at the end of the day, that's just practicing like the gratitude. You know, I really when I sit with myself, like meditate, you know, gratitude is something that I really try to focus on lately, because despite all the craziness in the world right now, like I have a lot of gratitude for where I'm at, and also just being alive in this moment to really contribute to the change of the entire planet. You know, like we're in a really unique and special moment as individuals to really change and correct history. You know, so I try to focus on the gratitude of being in this moment right now.
And you know, how could someone like more tangibly do that? Are there like writing prompts maybe that someone, since you know you're also into writing, that someone could follow to kind of start this process outside of exercising, meditation, and gratitude?
Yeah, I mean, one prompt I think could be what's like I said, you know, what's something or someone whose beauty you may take for granted, and then another could be what's something about yourself.
How long should they write for? Like, would you say?
I say 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'd say another prompt could be, you know, what's something about yourself you wish you knew more about. You know, because I think that's something that I've been thinking about lately too. Is just like, and you know, thankfully I have, you know, amazing friends who I can, you know, bounce these thoughts off with and have these conversations. Like, you know, why you know, it's just like, you know,
I know the squad personally, they're intense.
Yes. Yeah, no,
between amongst all of you gentlemen, you guys are gonna hold each other accountable forever.
Hey, nah, straight up. Tariq's here right now, actually.
Oh my God, Tariq!
Yeah, no,
love.
Yeah, I would. He just stood outside, but
okay.
Yeah, you know, like, you know, Tariq is an example. Like, you know, we had conversations about, even since he's been here, about just like, why is it that there are certain things that I do, or like that you do, you know, like so, and like just sitting with that and being like, okay, like why do I do this like this, or and like that can, I think, lead you down a rabbit hole of like, you know, I want to know more about myself in this way. I want to know more about like why I see the world this way, or I do this thing this way, or like, you know, yeah. So
I really love that, because see, I didn't really like have to, I mean, that was part of why I chose to come to an HBCU first, because I'm bicultural. I'm literally African American. My dad is Senegalese and my mom's American. So I wanted to know more about my Black culture, but I knew my dad did an incredible job of making sure that I wasn't lost, that I knew my identity as an African, which is incredible. But now I'm starting to, especially because I'm like, people, a lot of people say like there's no racism in Canada. False. It's just like really subtle, and it's also more so directed towards Native Americans. So now realizing that my mother is actually of Native American descent, now all of a sudden I'm like curious. I want to know more about that side of my culture that I completely have just like ignored my whole life, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Nick. You guys try those writing prompts. You know, this is Jelly and Jess Show. We're not only highlighting you know, really influential and incredible people as well as celebrity guests, but we are also trying to help each other get through these moments in a very tangible and concrete way. So try the writing prompts. Make sure that you guys follow Nicholas. He's going to have a lot of work coming up. If you were interested in his White Barbarism, aka White Barbie series that he has, and you want to follow up, make sure that you follow him so that you can get a follow up. Mans is dope, as you guys like to say here in Canada. We want to thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Sedalia and Jai Show, Nick. We're going to check in with you, you know, down the line and see how you're doing. We're wishing you the best of luck, especially with your fellowship. I told you once you start traveling, you got the hook up in Senegal. You know where to reach, girl. And any support that, you know, we can give, just reach out. I'm always here.
Well, do same. I really appreciate the space and the conversation opportunity. Thank you.
Amazing. You have an excellent night. We're going to let you go. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Cool. You as well. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the Sedalia and Jai Show tonight. What an amazing, amazing show. We want to thank Nicola Aziz again for joining us. Again, you guys, please don't forget to go follow Mans because he's out here. This episode of Sedalia and Jai Show is sponsored by Tandem Media. Check them out as well. And we're going to wrap it up. I'll see you next Tuesday. You know what it is.